He said a beginning of wisdom is admitting when you were wrong.
Sure.
Because some people will follow a bad idea to their grave.
It's horrible.
Rehoboam ends up getting some change in him.
Sure.
But it takes a lot for him to admit. Good morning, good morning. So thankful for the opportunity to be back on Led by the Word. We are in 2 Chronicles chapter 11, which, by the way, I've read through Chronicles multiple times. For some reason, spelling this word still struggles for me.
Is it the H?
I'm actually looking in my notes here, and it's spelled two different ways, side by side. So that's fun. Exciting thing. Dad called, and he said, we have closed captioning on television. That took us years to accomplish. And he said, I want to have a way for people that are hearing impaired to have prayer. So if you go to our website now, and it's ended up becoming so much more than just that, but there is a live prayer chat where you were going to talk to one of the prayer warriors here at Oasis Ministries, and they will chat with you in prayer. A lot of people that have been using it, we've always give the opportunity to call if they would like. People are in situations to where they can't talk on the phone. I'm at work, I'm actually in college right now, I'm just struggling and need some prayer. So if you would like to use our free prayer chat, just go to oasisministries.com, and that little thing in the bottom right works on tablets, phones, computers, whatever you got. It says, we're here for you. And you click that, you start typing, literally it just dings instantly. There's no lag, there's no latency, and you communicate back and forth with one of the prayer team. I really like this because when you're on the phone and you're telling someone links and you're telling someone, here's a resource that's really going to help you, or here's a sermon that's really going to help you, we're seeing via the analytics that when someone's like, I'm dealing with anxiety or depression, and we send them a resource and a sermon, they're going straight there and able to see it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing. We're called not just to preach the gospel to the lost, we're also here to help those that are Christians. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity. So if you're interested in that, just go to our website, and that is a free resource. What do you think of that?
I think it's amazing. I remember the days where you would have to request biblical Christian content via booklets, etc., in the mail, through a catalog.
Yeah. And
you would have to wait weeks. And with this prayer chat, it's instantaneous. I mean, of course, with the phones situation, of course it is too, but I think it's wonderful, not just the hearing impaired, but the situations you described, or there's people like me who absolutely loathe being on the phone. And a lot of times people are not comfortable talking on the phone about their personal problems, but do feel a little bit more comfortable in a chat type situation. We see that in a lot of areas right now. And I think it's amazing that we were able to get this up and running. And like you said, the closed captioning was such a bear to deal with. It was years, and it was frustrating. There was some tears possibly shed. But this, it just opened up. It was quick. It was easy. So I know the Lord's in this. And so, yeah, if you want to take advantage of it, highly recommend.
Super big props to the Oasis team. Dad got the vision on a Thursday. By Friday evening, we had this launched, and we're using it.
It was just amazing.
So yeah, you're going to start seeing some advertisements for this, and just us talking about it, how excited we are. Going into our next thing, Family Day is the 20th, so you'll be seeing this after the 20th. Hopefully we got so many great stories. I can't wait. The day before, me and some of the guys from the church were getting together and smoking meat. Mm-hmm. So I know it's going to be a lot of good food, and it's just going to be a whole lot of fun. Thank you to everyone that come out. I can't wait to see the photos too. The photos are always the best part of the events.
Oh yeah, 100%.
We're going into this 2 Chronicles chapter 11. Jessica, would you like to start us out and take us in? I'm really curious to see how you say his son's name, by the way. Rehoboam? Rehoboam?
Oh, I've been saying in my head is Rehoboam.
Rehoboam. I was really off.
Micah's dad actually made me aware that if you go onto certain Bible study websites, they have a pronunciation, if I could talk, of how to do things, how you say it. I never do that. I just like to say it really fast in my head, and that works out really well.
Rehoboam makes so much more sense than the words I was saying.
I don't know, it just flowed in my head. So if that's not the correct way, please don't correct me. I'm not interested in saying it correctly. I'm sorry.
Pause. I know it's been a minute since we've been here. We ended with the end of Solomon. And it was a heavy ending. It was a tough ending. But there is so much to glean just from these 3 chapters quickly. Really from the first chapter. Mm-hmm. You can learn so much about spiritual warfare very, very, very fast.
I actually you're starting in 11, but I had notes in 10.
Oh.
So just kind of like a recap. So this is after the death of Solomon. His son Rehoboam is made king, right? And we touched on this last time, I think. But there's so much, like you said, important things that happen, but this is also
Cataclysmic?
thank you. Sorry. Anyway, because this is actually where the country is divided into two. And from this, we see all this division. We see these kings come in. We're seeing all of this. And I know that the Lord has a whole plan laid out, and this was supposed to happen. But Rehoboam's foolishness is just, it literally divides a nation. And you think about the advice that he took. So just to recap, the people were like, hey, your daddy was kind of hard on us. Could you just lessen the load? We're not even asking to take away the load. We're just trying to, would you just consider easing up a little bit? So Rehoboam, like a wise king would, sought counsel. So he sought counsel from I'm just going to say it, the old guys. And the old guys were like, yeah, we're done with the temple. We could really ease up. We think you should ease up. And he's like, okay. And then he seeks counsel from basically the guys he grew up with around the palace or whatever. His buddies, his friends, his youngins, if you will. And they were like, you should reply in this really vulgar and petty manner. And he's like, I like that. Let's go with that.
That feels fun.
Right. And so he responds in this petty manner, and he kind of comes into a place of, well, I'm entitled to this. I'm the king. You guys got to do what I say. I'm reigning with all authority and everything. And that's so much where his foolishness was, and his pride was in himself. And he relied on his authority. And if he had just listened to outside authority, because if you pray, the Lord will put good counsel in your life, right? We talked about, I think last time, your dad has given us great counsel. He's older than us. He's been around, a little longer, so he has this wisdom. And sometimes the Lord uses people to impart wisdom, Amen? So we have that opportunity to listen, or we have that opportunity to kind of do our own thing, or listen to people who haven't been as seasoned. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important when you're listening to sermons, when you're reading commentaries, look at the source. Is this a trusted person? Is this a person listening from the Lord? Or is this a person that's petty and young and just do your own thing? You have this authority in Christ. You can do this, I think it was Paul said that not all things are profitable. You can do a lot of things, but let's just pause. There's a verse, I think it's in Proverbs, that a kind word turns away wrath. That lives in my head rent-free, because I see people get into it with their spouses, get into it with their kids, and I'm like, can we just reword this? It would have gone a whole different route. But this man just, went his own way, took his own pride, and because of this, it literally split a nation. So I think sometimes when we're communicating, we're trying to get a point across, or we're like, I'm in the right. Okay, you might be in the right as your authority, a king, but your dedication to being right is causing division. It's causing strife. It's causing problems in your personal life.
We talk a lot about all these Old Testament idols. I'm going to say it right now. We have people that are their own idol.
Yeah.
And this dude, he is so much his own idol. Like Jesse said, he's like, well, I am king. Mm-hmm. I could be smart like that. He goes against the will of God. We all do that as humans.
Sure.
But he goes against the will of God, and he said, you know what? I can make this work. I am more powerful than God. Mm. And he doesn't state that, but he tries that. He gathers together 180,000 chosen warriors. These aren't basic fighters. These are the best of the best. Mm-hmm. And still loses. He builds 13 cities with the most elite trained warriors to defend them. And these are called cities of defense. Mm-hmm. Still fails. You want to think that, well, I need to be doing this. The Bible warns me about this. Romans chapter 7, chapter 16, chapter 13 talks about this. I don't have to. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you, going against the will of God, going against the plan of God, going against the ordination of God in your life and the layout for your life will fail every time. Not percentage. People are always looking at percentage. They've been talking a lot about this lottery because it's so big. What are my chances of winning? What are the odds of winning? I'll tell you right now, your odds of winning against God are 0.
Right.
In the, whatever they say, 40 billion people have walked the earth estimate. Mm. No one has won against the will of God.
Right.
And think of that. Talk about that a second. That's unbelievable.
And you always think, and I think with the lottery too, I'm so glad you brought that up. People are so optimistic. They're like, it could happen to me. I could win the lottery. It's like, I could go against God and win. No other human's done it, but I'm going to try. It's like, what is this?
And it's not like Rehoboam is ignorant. He's a wise dude. He knew to seek counsel, and he's surrounded by so much history, not 30 generations ago from his dad.
Right.
Going against God didn't work. From his grandfather, going against God didn't work. But Rehoboam is like, I can do this.
I mean, it probably worked for me, right? Like,
so Rehoboam does this. It took David decades to prepare for the temple. Mm-hmm. It took Solomon years to build the temple. It took Rehoboam 3 years and change to destroy the temple. Mm. And if you look at your walk with God, I don't care if your grandfather had the biggest church in the United States. I don't care if your dad is the biggest pastor. If you are going against the will of God, it don't take no time for it all to crumble. David goes in, and one of his big bragging rights is the golden shields. We take precious metals for the defense of our soldiers. Rehoboam lost every golden shield. Mm-hmm. So then Rehoboam's like, no, guys, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to get good shields. We're going to get bronze shields. Yeah. And it's like, okay, the dudes are defended, but that's not what any of this was about. We were the righteous. We had a purity about us.
Yeah, because in the gold, it was the purity.
It was the purity of the fire that brought all that in. So Rehoboam comes in and says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're bringing in something. It's still going to work. Mm-hmm. He's still, at this point, I think we're in chapter 12, he's still like, I can make this work. I want to tell you something. Someone told me that really stuck out to me. He said, a beginning of wisdom is admitting when you were wrong.
Sure.
Because some people will follow a bad idea to their grave.
It's horrible.
Rehoboam ends up getting some change in him.
Sure.
But it takes a lot for him to admit, I was wrong.
And something that kind of makes me sick is the temple was literally looted. So like when you surrender to your own ideas, your own things, your own authority and all this, the enemy came to kill, steal, and destroy. Heavy on the steal in this story. Like, the temple was, messed up and everything, but they stole. They stole what, Solomon had put in there. Precious things we talked about last time, I think. So it's like, if you allow the enemy in your life, he's going to come and he's going to steal. You're going to open the door wide open for him to steal your peace, your joy, your love for God, your love for your family, the love that you're supposed to have for humanity. Like, he'll just come in and just rob you blind. It's horrible.
Someone says, and this is one of those a quote from an old minister, but he says, the picture of Rehoboam's substitution of brass for gold is utterly pathetic. He said, because we look at the lack of purity and we look at what he's done, but he said, in our spiritual lives, what are we substituting for things we lost in sin and unfaithfulness to our relationships with God? You know what? I had a totally different route. I can't wait to teach this in Sunday school for the young adults and kids. This is such a warning, and it blows my mind. I wrote here 5 years, and I also wrote 3.5 years. How long did it take for him? I think it was 3.5 years for the temple and then 5 years for the kingdom, wasn't it?
I think so.
Okay. So it didn't take no time.
No.
I would look at a year as forever. 5 years ain't nothing. Like 5 years are just come and they're gone.
Your girl's almost 5 years old.
That's when you have kids, oh my goodness, it's like time doesn't even make sense anymore.
It's accelerated.
Time math is. So this dude, what took them decades to accomplish, just gone. Mm-hmm. Like you said, pillage the temple. And the temple has still never reached this ever again.
Mm-hmm. They've been talking about rebuilding it lately, and I'm like, hello, in times. But
hello. Oh, I know what this is about.
I've read this before. Hold on.
I've read this.
But yeah, it's really sad. And I think if you've grown up in church any amount of time, you've heard it said that, it only takes like 2 generations to completely forget about God, like in your family. And that's why they're always like, hold this standard, hold this tradition, hold this whatever. And it doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, David's this great king, right? And so Solomon, an excellent king, had a little woman trouble there. But, he was wise,
wise.
all this stuff. And then you have Rehoboam who's just coming out here being a fool, and it's just like you see those 3 generations. David had a heart after God. Solomon asking the Lord for wisdom, but kind of messing up a little more in bigger areas. And then you have Rehoboam who divides the nation. And it's like, whoa. So it's really important when you're thinking about, and I know we say this a lot, I'm just going to reiterate, when you are making choices in your walk with God, those choices affect other people. 100%.
Huge. Because when you're following God and you're giving it your full effort and you're giving your heart to God, you're giving your life to God, you're giving your worship to God, you can't even measure the impact of good you're making.
Right.
So pause. Let's think of that for a minute. The ripple effects of you doing everything, seeking after God, following after God, outreaching, is you can't even fathom. You watching this video, I'm not talking about ministers, I'm not talking about mega churches, I'm talking about us as individuals in our lives, in our jobs, in our careers, in our families. You take that away, so there's less good. Mm-hmm. But then you start bringing in destruction. And you're like, well, it's not that bad. You may look at one piece of one part of one day of your life and say it's not bad. If you could only zoom out, you could see how big of an issue you're making. But I don't want to end this doom and gloom like we had to with Solomon. I want to end this 2 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 6. I'm not even going to read it, but Rehoboam humbles himself.
Yes.
And in that humbling is mercy shown and love of God shown. And I want to encourage you now, if I'm saying this, and I don't want to condemn you. I want you to feel the conviction of God. If you're feeling this, you're like, good, I can't change. I'll never change. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, I'll never change. I'll never be able to change. And he said, I remember telling myself that 2 years ago. And he said, I'm changed now.
Right.
You can change. You may be in a situation where you feel like you're in this cycle. The enemy wants you in a cycle. You just feel like you're tumbling. You feel like there's no way out. God can put an end to all those issues. God can put an end to all that destruction. God can put an end to all that self-hurt that you're doing in yourself and in your life if you will just humble yourself. Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, well, I don't know how to change. That's fine. You don't have to know how to change. You don't have to have this big 12-step program. You just start easing and giving more and more of yourself to God like Rehoboam did, and God's going to show you mercy.
And we see that pattern over and over in the Old Testament.
And we're not in the Old Testament covenant anymore. We're in a very graceful time. His grace, wherever sin abounds, there is more grace there. Yes. So you confess your issues. You say, God, I see what you want from me in Ephesians. I see what you want from me in Romans. And God, I ain't lining up with 30% of it, 20% of it, half of it. I'm struggling with a lot of this. Confess those sins and seek God for help.
Yeah, and He'll change you. You don't have to worry about doing it yourself. Don't, bother. I see a lot of people get hung up. The enemy gave them the lie that, well, yeah, you need to go get right in church and all this, but you need to get your life together first. That's a lie from hell. Come and let the Lord wash you. The rest will fall into place.
You have all these weaknesses that you're hyper-focused on. But the Bible tells us, in my weaknesses, He is made strong. And what He does is He looks at that thing and He puts Himself in that situation. And He heals it and He fixes it. And there's no longer strength in you in that weakness. There's strength in Him in that weakness. Amen. So whatever weakness you're thinking like, I'll never be anything but this. No, you may feel that forever. You may think that in your mind forever. But you put Him in that situation. It's no longer you, it's Him. And say, look at all the grace here. Look at all the mercy here. Look at all the change here because God is here.
That's right.
Rehoboam had a change. He got some favor. He got some mercy. He got some mercy, and it was undeserved. Yeah. And that's what's so beautiful about this story is a bad man making bad choices over and over again got mercy from a good, loving God. Honestly, I've not really heard a lot of talk about Rehoboam. Maybe I had. Maybe I've heard it pronounced differently. But today, reading it and studying it, I love this story.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
It has the redemption arc.
Yeah. I think when people do their end time prophecy, they talk about the dude that was over the destruction of the temple and the problematic guy, but not the guy that did go through some change at the end.
Yeah, who learned the hard way, the very hard way. But
if you're young watching this, you do not have to learn the hard way. You can learn from these stories.
Yes. Amen. And I'm so thankful that the Lord lays out a situation. I reference her all the time, but Abigail Sanchez came and was talking about how whatever situation you're facing in your life, and I was like, is this right? She's right, though. There is a situation that the Lord has provided in His Word to be like, listen, this is what you're going through. This is how you come out on the other side. And I'm just like, wow, let me glean that wisdom.
To reiterate with that, I quoted that 2 weeks ago in Sunday school, and a kid raised their hands and said, where in the Bible does it talk about how to get better in Fortnite? And I said, sit down. Sit down.
It's called study to show yourself approved. Try doing that for a little bit. Sit down your controller.
Where were you? I needed you there for this situation.
I like to hit Sunday morning work, so I was there. Yeah.
It's funny you brought that up 2 weeks ago. You had to get with Cody on that story he was teaching with me.
That's my best burns and comebacks 2 weeks after the fact. So.
Thank you so much for tuning in with us. Please take a moment to like this and share this. God bless you.
God bless you.